Welcome to Living Free with Ahna, the podcast where I tell the truth about what it takes to heal, to change, and to follow God with your whole life. I'm Ahna, your host, and my goal is simple: to help you recognize that you're not falling apart, you are simply being rebuilt. Women go through constant cycles of sacred shedding and rebuilding and rebirthing all of their lives. And those moments are not weakness. They are the places where God forms who we actually become. And so here we talk about obedience, not as a burden, but as a doorway into becoming the woman God envisioned when He formed you. So we explore the nervous system, faith, relationships, pleasure, birth, embodiment, and the quiet spiritual power that emerges when a woman finally comes home to her body, feels safe in her body, and listens to God's voice. And so this is a space for women who are done performing, done pleasing, and done shrinking. Women who are willing to let God strip away what is false so He can rebirth what is true. Each week we'll dig into practical tools, real stories, and spiritual truth so you can break the patterns holding you back, reclaim your joy, rebuild your life, and step boldly into the freedom that comes only from saying yes to God. Hi, everybody. Today's episode is going to be a culmination of just some thoughts and learnings that I've acquired over the course of my healing journey and over the course of the deepening of my relationship with God, and just some of the patterns, I guess, that I see in the world today of all of the places that I see people are trying to fill the void that only God can fill. And these are just some thoughts and learnings that have been on my heart. And so this podcast might be all over the place, but my hope is that it's inspiring, it brings hope, and gives you a better idea of what it really takes to have a relationship with God, to really get to know the Father's heart. And what I believe is that when you really, really begin to get to know God and remember your divinity, that you are a part of God, your entire life will change. And when you fully surrender, which is a word I never understood because I had no idea how to surrender. I wanted to be in control of literally everything in my life. But when you really can truly surrender, knowing that you are completely held by God, especially as the feminine, your health will change, your finances will change, your relationships will change, your confidence will change, the way you show up in the world. And so this is just, this is a very random episode of my thoughts. I was just feeling inspired to share on really why we must sit with our own darkness, our own shadows, in order to really get to know God. And, I believe we're all seeking a deeper relationship with God to really get to know Him. And many of us don't know that's what we're seeking. And I say this from experience. No matter who you are, no matter what you believe in, you are on a spiritual journey, whether you recognize it or not. And we're all trying to fill voids in our life with things that are never going to fill the void that only the Father can fill. The big house, the bank account having a ton of money in it, right? The shopping, the porn, the alcohol, right? The partying, the casual sex, hookup culture, which I'll probably do an entire episode on. Jumping from relationship to relationship, the other addictions we have, it's because we are lacking something. And what we're lacking is a relationship with the Father, with God. And nothing in this life will ever fill the void that God can fill. And some may think a relationship with God means reading the Bible, right? Going to church consistently, following the 10 commandments, whatever it may be, right? But it's much, 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 much more than that. And I when I give examples throughout the episode today, this isn't to be disrespectful. This is all coming from personal experience. And I'm not saying that anything is wrong or anything is bad, right or wrong. But I'm sharing my personal experience of what I believe the depths that we need to go into in order to really have a relationship with God. To me, a connection with the divine. It's an inward journey. It's a complete stripping of the soul. I posted about this earlier this week, but it's a descent. It is a descent into the depths of yourself, the areas that you would rather not touch. It's not something that's able to be mediated by priests, by systems, or by hierarchy. You can't get to know the Father, I truly believe this, until you have sat with your own darkest shadows, until you have been so completely consumed by your own darkness or challenges in this life that the only one you can turn to pull you out is God, until you recognize your dependence on him. And geez, when you recognize that everything you have, every blessing, all the money, the relationships, everything that you have comes from God. And let's be honest, you don't turn to God when life is perfect. You don't turn to God when you're not having money problems, when you're not having relationship problems, when your world isn't turned upside down, when you're not completely consumed by fear. When life is perfect and flowing smoothly, you don't turn to God. And that is part of the reason I believe many people are struggling right now. It's a wake-up call. It's a wake-up call from God. You turn to God when the illusion of self-sufficiency collapses. And I really believe unless you face your own darkness, you can't fully understand God's mercy. And that doesn't come from sitting in a church pew or memorizing the Bible. It doesn't come from belief in God alone. And this may be controversial, but belief in God alone, belief in Jesus alone, it's not enough. You must change. You must become better. You must follow God's will for your life. God wants obedience. And not that those things are wrong, church, memorizing Bible verses, that's not what I'm saying, again. But it's not how you're going to truly get to know God's heart. We can't bypass our healing. And to heal your own heart and become more like him, it's a descent. And to truly get to know the Father, it takes courage, it takes bravery to go to the painful places of your own psyche, of your own childhood, of your own whatever wounds that you have that you would rather not touch. Whatever changes you feel you're being called to make that you don't want to make, right? It requires you to face your fears. It requires you to do things you don't want to do, typically. That is the path of following God. And God is not met through the polished version of you. He meets you in the most raw, the most painful, most unedited, unguarded places. Your darkness, you're actually feeling your grief, feeling your fear, feeling your anger, your shame, your unmet needs, your unhealed wounds. This is the pathway to meet God. And it's the pathway to your true self. And, I will share, I believed in God my whole life. And he pulled me out of some pretty dark places even throughout childhood, and kept me going, knowing that I had a Father in heaven that was protecting me and going to save me one day. But just to kind of go back, I believed in God my whole life, but until I had nowhere and no one to turn to other than God in my darkest hours in these past few years, that's when I truly met God. And for much of my life, many people saw me as the happy girl with a great life, and my adulthood life and my first marriage was fantastic. I did have a great life, but I was still in pain on the inside. There was always something missing, and the happy face, it was a mask. I was burying grief, I was burying shame, I was burying guilt, a ton of fear. And I was burying all of these emotions that I carried with me from childhood. I buried 12 to 13 years of sexual abuse. And underneath that happy face, I felt dirty, I felt disgusting, I felt unworthy, unloved, never good enough, shameful. I was willing to put on whatever face. I was willing to be whoever I needed to be. I was willing to fit in with any crowd. I was willing to, stay quiet and never share any of my opinions, just to make sure I was loved and accepted by those around me. And I will tell you, all of my deepest, darkest fears, shadows, unmet needs, feelings, everything came forward these last few years when I committed to healing myself. And I will tell you, when you sit in the pit of your own humanity and your own shadows, that is where compassion grows, and that is when your heart becomes more like God's. When you are stripped completely bare, that's when you meet God. And your darkness, the places you don't want to go, right? It's your greatest teacher. And those who hurt you in this life, or those who abused you, or whatever it may be, right? They were your greatest teachers in this life. And, in fact, God helped me see abuse and trauma as a gift. And the people that, did it, it's a gift. Why? Because it helped me remember my divinity. God helped me remember that no matter what you go through in this life, nothing breaks the spirit. And it helped me become the woman I am today. The warrior spirit, courageous, strong, soft, gentle, confident, and deeply compassionate, understanding and loving, and with a heart that is becoming more and more like God's each day. And I share all of those things because without that pain, without those experiences, I wouldn't know God. And I would still have a void in my heart that I was filling with alcohol and acceptance and love from other people instead of His. And I could have never come to a place of forgiveness or compassion for those who have hurt me, or the experiences in my life. I could have never gotten to this place, one, without God, but without feeling and sitting with all of those raw emotions that I had. And the other thing I'll say is, when you really sit with your own shadows, you realize we're all in need of forgiveness. We're all in need of God's mercy. And that experience transforms how you love others, and you remember that we are all a part of God. And you really get to know God. But you can't get there unless you commit to yourself. And if you really desire to know the Father and become who you've always been destined to be, you're going to be asked to do things in this life that are going to completely pull you out of comfort. And through those experiences, that is where those, unfelt emotions are going to come up to be felt and healed. So yes, that might mean divorce. That could mean broken family relationships. It means broken friendships. It means leaving a steady career. It means doing things in life that make absolutely no sense to anyone. That is typically the path of the soul. That is typically what obedience to God actually looks like. You will be ostracized. You will be misunderstood. You will be left to stand alone. Like I said before, you will be stripped bare. Why? Because those are the exact conditions where the false you dies and the true you emerges. And when you're alone and you don't know who you are anymore, what your life is anymore, right? You finally hear the voice that you've been drowning out all along, your own voice. And a call to God, a genuine call from God is deeply personal. Other people weren't given your vision. They weren't given your dreams, your instructions, your nudges, your inner knowing. So when you follow God, when you're obedient to God and the call of your inner voice, your heart, right? Others may not understand. They may think you're changing. They may project fear because your courage is exposing their complacency. They may feel threatened because you're no longer who they need you to be. Your obedience to God will look like disobedience to people. It will probably make you look crazy, but this is the whole point. This creates separation. God does this on purpose and not to isolate you, but to clarify who your life belongs to. And when you genuinely follow God, you will outgrow old versions of yourself. You will change. You're supposed to change. You will outgrow old relationships. You will lose the approval of people who prefer the safe you. You will be asked to confront your darkness. You'll be asked to confront your shadows. You will be asked to heal things you would rather avoid. You will be asked to say yes to things that seem unreasonable or doesn't feel like it makes sense. You'll be asked to say no to things everyone else is saying yes to. And that is what obedience to God looks like. But that isn't what I hear being preached in churches. That's just not what I hear a lot of people talking about. That is, though, what I truly believe to be the truth. And most people live from fear, from comfort, from social pressure. And I get it. I was there. But that is also why many of us never reach our destiny. That's why we never live out our dreams. Because we're not actually being obedient to God. When you choose God, you break rank with the crowd, and it's just how it is, and it will feel lonely at first. But later it becomes the very thing that liberates you. It becomes the very thing that frees you and will make you the happiest you've ever been in life. And if you are truly obedient to the calling that God has for your life, it is very likely that your life will fall apart. Yes, most likely your entire life. I've been looking at the Bible more. I've been called to look at the Gnostic Gospel as well as the Holy Bible and some other texts, and really focusing on the teachings of Jesus. And one thing that Jesus says is that whoever wants to save his life will lose it. But whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. And after these last few years, I was like, wow, that really makes sense to me. Because Jesus is saying that the life that you think you're trying to protect, right? Your image, your ego, your safety, your reputation, your plans, your control, it's not your real life. It's the life you've constructed to survive pain, rejection, expectation, the world's demands. To lose your life means letting your old identity die, means letting your ego loosen, means letting your false security go. It's surrendering the life you built without God. And then, only then, can the real you emerge. God will let people fall away so you stop leaning on them and you start leaning on Him. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is, if you find your life falling apart, know that this isn't just something that's just happening to you. It's literally happening for you. God will let certain relationships collapse so you stop asking other people to play the role of God. So He's going to send you into seasons where no one affirms you, where no one applauds you, where no one comes with you. And it's not to harm you, even though you're probably going to be pretty upset in the process. It's to anchor you. It's aloneness is how God builds faith in you. God creates desperation to build faith and to create breakthroughs. And so we have to understand that everything in this life, every challenge, every circumstance, every relationship that falls away, each thing in our lives is divinely orchestrated by God. Every single thing. Everything. Sometimes it's to build faith. Sometimes it's to build strength. Sometimes it's simply to shake you and wake you up because you aren't listening to God. Each of us here, we have a purpose in life, and we should always be striving to become ideal, to become the best version of ourselves. But we've gotten so complacent. We've become so comfortable with being comfortable and just settling. That's not why we're here. Everybody has the ability to live the life of their dreams. Everybody. And I think we've just gotten so used to settling, and we don't like discomfort. And it stunts growth. And we're here to grow. To truly walk with God is to be obedient to Him, and that usually requires some pain, some suffering, but then it's all worth it. And I just want to give you an example of a situation of how God gets our attention in this life. And there was a period of time last year, and I wasn't tithing my money. I wasn't donating some of the money that I had. And I was in a fortunate situation. And I really, at the time, I didn't understand the importance of tithing. I truly didn't understand that oh, my money, it's God's money, right? I'm fortunate right now because of Him. And so anyways, what ended up happening was my car kept breaking down. And I don't have an old car. I kept having issue after issue, out of nowhere, and kept having to go in and spend thousands of dollars to fix my not old car. just wasn't even making sense. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And this was in the middle of a lot of my deep healing, and I was pretty frustrated. And then I started to have some dreams about giving money to the poor. And then I was, driving behind some cars, and some of the license plates would say give. Literally, I'd be behind a car and it said give. And one day it just was like a light bulb in my head, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to give. I'm supposed to donate. And I needed to share my fortune with the less fortunate. And so at that time, I took a lump sum of money, and I donated it to a cause. A foundation that had helped me through my healing. And what do you know? All my car issues stopped. Just like that. In fact, my car was in the dealership getting fixed when like I decided to donate. And when I went back to the dealership, they were like, I don't know how this is possible, but they were like, yeah, we did the part for free. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. And like that is literally how all of this works. And I share that because it is such a real example. And that's just one example. And I just want you to understand that in this life, things are not random. We are not victim. Even the experiences we've had, even abuse, even all of it, we're not victim. We are victorious, right? We learn from those experiences and we develop compassion once we've sat with the pain of those experiences, and you develop compassion and your heart becomes more like God's. Because you see that even you need compassion. Everything you have, every blessing, every challenge, everything in this life, it is orchestrated by God. It is not luck. It is not random misfortune. It is not random fortune. It's all a part of God's plan to help you become better. And when you're not listening to your inner voice, when you're failing to grow, there will be 3 pillars in your life that will begin to fall apart. Your relationships, your finances, and your health. Oftentimes we have like 1 to 2 pillars that are strong, 1 to 2 that are struggling, right? And so in whichever area you're having issues, it is the area we need to put focus on. This is the area we need to improve upon, where we need to grow, where we need to change. And I just feel called to share this because in the coming days, we are going to see more people struggling with these pillars, and we already are. You just think about health. Autoimmune has skyrocketed, along with cancer, and sometimes even a really tough diagnosis still doesn't make people change. And many people are struggling in their relationships and their finances, and it's because God is literally trying to get all of our attention, to make healing ourselves a priority, to repent, to get into alignment, because we all have a purpose here. Only some of us will be courageous enough to truly follow the call. And I get it, it's scary. And Jesus is, through his teachings, is pretty blunt. You cannot carry your old self into your true calling. Your coping mechanisms, right? The masks, the facades, the survival strategies, the people-pleasing, the trauma-born identities. Those things cannot build the life that God has for you. Every human is born with a God-shaped center. And we can fill it. We can try to fill it with relationships. We can try to fill it with work. We can try to fill it with success, random, spiritual practices, plant medicine, the constant loop of healing. We can distract ourselves with sex and money and all the things, and you can numb your relationships or numb your pain with relationships and shopping and alcohol and busyness and perfection. And what I'm trying to say is nothing is going to anchor you except for God. And to get right with God means coming into alignment with the one your soul was designed for, God. And that is why nothing feels enough until you do. And I know, because I know what it's like to have this feeling of emptiness. No matter what you do, it feels like there's just always this ache, I can't even explain it. It's this emptiness until it is filled with the love of God. And this will require you to change your eating habits. It will require deep purification of your body. It will require you to heal the wounds of your inner child you're still carrying in your adult body. It will require you to leave certain relationships or leave a state or finally have that conversation with your mom that you've been putting off for decades, right? I don't know what it is for you, right? But it will require change. And through this purification, through the changes, through sitting with your pain, through choosing healing, you will begin to develop a relationship with God. And if you're currently lacking a relationship with the Creator, you will try to get it from people. I did. You will ask them to fill you, them to complete you, them to validate you. And gosh, that pressure is miserable. And I know. But when God becomes your source, love becomes something you give rather than something you're constantly starving for. Something you give instead of something you're seeking, if that makes sense. And your entire life can change. And when you follow God's will for your life and you choose growth and you choose healing, despite being misunderstood, despite not wanting to go there, your health will improve. Your relationships will improve. You will call in your beloved, the companion that God has just waiting for you. You will call in wealth and prosperity. Your entire life will improve because that's all that God wants for us in the first place. He doesn't withhold blessings. And boy, this was a lesson I had to learn myself. But God does not withhold blessings. He's simply waiting for the version of you that feels worthy enough of having them. And that, my friends, is a journey. It's a descent into your own shadows. And until you begin to remember your divinity, remember who you are, the one who sent you, the one who created you, there will always be something that feels like it's missing. And so, if you're looking for support on your journey, I do offer free consults on my website at regenerativebirth.com. But I just, I don't know, these were just like some major learnings and lessons and just realizations that I've acquired over the past, many years, but specifically the last 2 years, which have been the hardest of my life. Working through childhood trauma, leaving my marriage and moving states and leaving a steady career and really completely stepping into the unknown and having all of my fears come up in the midst of it. And what I've recognized, what it has done in me is built so much faith. And I just recognized where I was seeking love in all the wrong places, and ultimately what I was looking for the entire time was a relationship with God. And so I hope all these random thoughts are inspiring or bring you hope or just give you something to just chew on or think about. And you may not agree with everything, and that's okay. I'm not looking for approval. I'm not looking for everyone to agree with this. However, I do feel it's a message that needed to be shared. And anyways, thank you for your support. If you know someone else that would benefit from hearing about this, please share with someone who needs these messages. And, if you're someone that has you felt like you've been in pain a lot of your life, if you just feel like something is missing and you want to develop a deeper relationship with yourself and heal your inner child, please don't hesitate to reach out. Again, my website is regenerativebirth.com, and you can also find me on Instagram at Ahna_regenerativebirth. So thank you again.